Africa produces raw football talent, but behind every legend, there is a childhood of struggle, sacrifice, and unbelievable courage. Today, we dive deep into the stories the world doesn't talk about, stories the cameras never captured, stories you need to hear. Because in Africa, football is more than a game. It is survival, it is hope, it is the only way out. In a forgotten corner of Malawi, where the wind carries the smell of firewood and the sound of children laughing fills the sky, lived a boy named Chimwemwe. He didn't have a football, he didn't have boots, he didn't even have a proper field. But what he had was a dream so big it could not fit inside the boundaries of his small village. When the other kids were asleep, Chimwemwe was still outside, twisting old plastic bags into the shape of a ball. He tied them together with sisal fiber from a broken sack. It wasn't round, it wasn't smooth, but to him, it was everything. He played barefoot on soil so hot that every step burned his feet. But he didn't care. Pain was nothing. He had a mission. Every evening, as the orange African sun dipped below the hills, he practiced alone, dribbling past imaginary defenders, scoring imaginary goals, celebrating imaginary trophies. And slowly, silently, he became unstoppable. Locals began to notice him. They would say, "That boy, the one with the plastic ball, he has something." Coaches said he trained harder than everyone, not because he had a field, but because he had hunger. He didn't just dream about football, he lived it, he breathed it. It was the only future he saw. And that barefoot boy, the one who played with a stone ball, would one day put Malawi on the football map. In Africa, talent is not built by facilities. It is built by fire, the kind that starts in the heart. In northern Nigeria, where the land stretches endlessly and the sun shows no mercy, a 17-year-old boy prepared for the biggest moment of his life, football trials. But there was a problem. He had no money for transport. He looked at his mother. She looked back at him. Both knew the family couldn't afford even the cheapest ride. So he made a decision that would define his life. He tied his worn-out shoes, picked up his small bag, and began to walk. 20 kilometers under the burning sun, through dusty roads that cut across farmlands and empty fields. With every step, doubt tried to whisper, "Turn back. You will never make it. It's too far." But he didn't stop. He walked and walked and walked. By the time he reached the trial ground, his legs were shaking. His clothes were soaked with sweat. And people stared at him like he was crazy. Some laughed. Some said, "This one won't even last 10 minutes. But life has a way of honoring those who suffer for their dreams. When the trial began, he dominated. Every pass, every run, every shot. The scouts were stunned. One of them even asked, "Where did this boy come from?" He simply smiled and said, "From far, very far." But they didn't know he meant it literally. Today, thousands of African kids face the same battle. No boots, no transport, no support. But still, they rise. In Ghana, there was a boy whose life began in the toughest conditions possible. He didn't have a home. He didn't have a bed. At night, he slept under market stalls using old sacks as blankets. He didn't know where his next meal would come from. But he knew one thing. Football made him feel alive. He played barefoot on concrete streets, dodging cars and jumping over potholes. Older boys pushed him, fought him, kicked him harder than defenders in any professional match. But he never backed down. One day, a local coach saw him. The boy was juggling a broken ball with the focus of a champion. The coach stood still, watching in silence. He knew immediately, This child was different. The boy got a chance to join a youth team, and from that moment, his life changed. He rose from the streets to the stadium, from hunger to medals, from being invisible to becoming a national hero. Years later, when success finally came, he didn't forget where he came from. Using his own money, he built training centers for kids living the same life he once lived. Kids who sleep under stalls, kids with no hope except football. To the world, it's just football. To Africa, it's transformative. But behind the glory, there are scars, deep scars. Some African players were tricked by fake agents, men who promised Europe but delivered pain. Families sold land, sold cattle, sold everything, just to pay an agent who disappeared the moment the plane landed. Some young boys arrived in Europe with expired visas, no contacts, no club, no money. They slept in bus stations, hid from immigration officers. Some begged to survive. Some never came back home. There are stories of players who were locked out of training grounds, players who lost passports, players who were abandoned after injuries. These are the stories nobody wants to tell, but they matter because they show the real price of chasing the dream. But Africa is also a land of legends, giants who rose from nothing to shake the world. Didier Drogba, a man whose influence went beyond the pitch. His voice helped stop a civil war in Ivory Coast. Few footballers have ever held that kind of power. Samuel Eto'o, the boy who grew up in the streets of Cameroon, rejected by Real Madrid, mocked, disrespected, but he fought back and became one of the greatest strikers football has ever seen. Sadio Mane, a superstar who stayed humble, the man who built hospitals, schools, wells, and gave hope to his hometown in Senegal. A footballer with a heart bigger than any trophy. Asisat Oshoala, from the streets of Lagos to global greatness, a pioneer for African women's football, a symbol of strength, courage, and excellence. These legends remind the world of one truth. Africa is full of fighters, not just footballers. The future of African football is unfolding right now. In small towns and dusty fields, barefoot kids are shaping themselves into future champions. In academies hidden deep inside African cities, unknown talents are preparing to shock the world. In Europe, young African wonder kids are breaking into big teams, kids whose names the world will soon learn to pronounce. And the rise of African women's football is just beginning. A new generation of queens is coming. Faster, stronger, hungrier than ever before. These are the stories you will cover on Sports Pace 4. These are the names the world will talk about in the future, and you will be the one who tells their story first. This is Sports Pace 4, where African football stories live forever. Subscribe and join the journey.